Feeling like you need a cybersecurity decoder ring sometimes.
Happens to the best of us.
Well, you've definitely come to the right place. Today, we're going to cut through all that jargon.
Hmm.
We're diving deep into the core ideas, the foundations of digital defense.
We've pulled together some key questions and answers.
Exactly. And the mission for you, our listener, is to get a really quick but solid grasp of the security principles that actually matter.
So you can feel a bit more confident navigating, well, everything digital these days.
Right. Cut through the noise, focus on what's crucial. Let's jump in.
Sounds good. You know, what's really interesting about cybersecurity is how these sometimes seemingly simple concepts are the building blocks for really complex defenses.
Like learning the rules of chess before you can play.
Exactly like that. Once you get the basics, you start seeing the bigger picture, the strategy. So we're laying that groundwork today.
Perfect. So first up, hardening, it sounds, well, pretty obvious, right? Making things harder to break into.
That's the core of it, yeah. Hardening is really the process of making a system more secure by reducing its, what we call its attack surface.
Attack surface. Okay.
Yeah, so that means finding and getting rid of potential weak spots, like unnecessary software, open ports, services you don't actually need running, things that could be exploited.
So cleaning house, digitally speaking.
Sort of, but it's not just a one-time cleanup. It's an ongoing thing. You have to keep patching, updating, adapting as new threats pop up.
Right. It's never really done.
Never truly done. And a big challenge is figuring out what to harden first. You usually focus on the most critical systems, the ones most exposed.
Makes sense. Okay, so hardening is continuous. Now, what about role-based access control? RBAC. How does that work day to day?
RBAC. It's a really efficient way to manage permissions. It's based on someone's job function, their role in the organization.
Okay,
So instead of giving access rights to, say, Bob specifically, you give rights to the accountant role. And then you assign Bob to that role.
got it.
And that role has predefined access. Like an accountant role can access financial software, but maybe not the HR database. It simplifies managing who gets access to what.
And ensures people only have the keys they absolutely need for their job.
Precisely. The principle of least privilege. Think about a hospital. A doctor needs patient charts, but maybe not the IT system configuration files. RBAC handles that neatly.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, what about an air gap? That sounds dramatic.
It is pretty dramatic, and it's a very strong security measure. An air gap means a system is physically completely disconnected from any network. No cables, no Wi-Fi, nothing.
Literally air between it and everything else.
Exactly, the gap of air. This is usually reserved for super sensitive stuff, things like control systems for power plants or highly classified military systems, where you absolutely cannot risk any remote access.
Makes sense for critical infrastructure.
Definitely. But maintaining a true air gap is tricky nowadays. Data often still needs to get on or off that system somehow, maybe via USB drive, and that introduces its own risks.
Physical security becomes key then.
Absolutely. Okay, so air gaps are for extreme cases. Then there's the demilitarized zone, the DMZ. What's the idea there?
Ah, the DMZ. Think of it like a buffer zone.
A buffer zone. Okay.
Yeah, it's a separate network segment that sits between your trusted internal network, where all your company secrets are, and the untrusted outside world, like the internet.
Right.
You put your public-facing services in the DMZ, things like your company website, your email server.
The stuff people need to access from outside.
Exactly. So if one of those servers gets compromised, the attacker is hopefully contained within the DMZ.
And they don't get straight into your main internal network,
Right. It's like a security checkpoint, limits the blast radius if something goes wrong out front.
like a lobby before you get into the main offices.
Got it.
Okay, let's talk about max filtering. How does that help block things down? Okay, max filtering, this works at a more basic level. Every network device, like your laptop or phone, has a unique physical address called a MAC address.
Right. Built into the hardware.
Yeah. So with MAC filtering, you can go into your Wi-Fi router, for example, and create a list. You can say only these specific MAC addresses are allowed to connect to my network.
So you pre-approve devices.
You do. It's a simple way to block unknown devices, stops your neighbor from hopping on your Wi-Fi easily.
But, I sense a but.
Well, the but is that MAC addresses can be faked or spoofed. It's not actually that hard for someone who knows what they're doing to make their device pretend it has an allowed MAC address.
Ah, so it's not foolproof.
Not at all. It provides a very basic layer, maybe stops casual snooping, but it's not strong security on its own. Think of it as a flimsy screen door.
Okay, more of a speed bump, like you said. Now, what about port security on a switch? How's that different from MAC filtering?
Port security is a bit more robust, and it happens on network switches. The boxes you plug devices into with Ethernet cables in an office, usually.
Right.
With port security, you can configure a specific physical port on that switch. You can say this port will only allow one specific MAC address, or maybe a maximum of two specific MAC addresses to connect through it.
So you're tying a device or devices to a physical plug point.
Exactly. It stops someone from just unplugging an office computer and plugging in their own laptop to get network access. If an unauthorized MAC address shows up on that configured port, the switch can shut the port down or send an alert.
That sounds significantly tighter, especially for physical network access.
It is. It gives you much more granular control at that physical connection level.
Okay. Now, shifting gears a bit, federated identity management, what's the win there?
Federated identity management. Okay, this is about making logging in easier and more secure across different independent systems or organizations.
With single sign-on?
Sort of, yeah, but potentially on a bigger scale. It lets you use one set of credentials, say your work login, to access services provided by other companies or partners. Think about using your Google or Facebook account to log into a third-party website.
Right, I do that all the time.
That's a form of it. On a corporate level, it means an employee might use their company credentials to access, say, a partner's portal or a cloud service like Salesforce. It reduces the number of passwords users need to juggle.
Which is always good.
Definitely improves user experience. And from a security perspective, it can centralize identity management and make it easier to revoke access across multiple systems if someone leaves the company, for instance. The key is establishing trust between these different systems, these identity providers.
So convenience and potentially better control. Okay, let's venture into the darker side now. Malware and threats. What's the real difference between a virus and a worm? People use those terms interchangeably sometimes.
They do, but there's a key distinction in how they spread. A virus needs a host, like an executable file or a document macro, and it typically needs some kind of human action to spread.
Like clicking on an infected email attachment.
Exactly. You open the file, run the program, and then the virus activates and tries to infect other files. It needs that ride, that interaction.
Okay. And a worm.
A worm is different. It's self-contained and self-replicating. It exploits vulnerabilities in systems or networks to spread automatically without needing any user to click anything.
So it just travels on its own.
Pretty much. It looks for vulnerable systems on a network and copies itself to them. That's why worms can spread so incredibly fast. Think of a virus needing a lift, while a worm has its own engine.
That's a really clear distinction. Virus needs help, worm goes solo, though I guess modern malware blends these things.
Oh, absolutely. Many modern threats combine characteristics. They might arrive like a virus in an email, but then have worm-like capabilities to spread across the network once inside.
The worst of both worlds. Okay, what about a rootkit? That just sounds bad.
It is bad. Rootkits are particularly nasty because their main goal is to hide. A rootkit is malware designed to get the highest level of access administrator or root access on a system.
The keys to the kingdom.
Exactly. And critically, it actively modifies the operating system itself to conceal its own presence and often hides other malware the attacker might install too.
So it makes itself invisible.
It tries very hard to. It can tamper with the tools you'd normally use to detect malware, making it incredibly difficult to find and remove. Having a rootkit means an attacker has deep, persistent, and hidden control over your system.
Like an invisible ghost in the machine. Yikes. Okay, we also hear more about API attacks lately. What are APIs and why are they targets?
Right. APIs, application programming interfaces. Think of them as the messengers or contracts that allow different software applications to talk to each other and exchange data.
Like how my weather app gets data from a weather service.
Precisely. That communication happens via an API. Now, because so many web and mobile applications rely heavily on APIs to function, they become a huge target for attackers.
If you can break the messenger.
You might be able to steal the message or send fake messages. Attackers look for flaws in how the API is designed or secured. Maybe the API doesn't check properly who is asking for data, or maybe you can trick it into giving up more data than it should. Things like injection attacks or broken authentication are common ways to exploit APIs.
So attacking the communication lines between software. Got it. What about a logic bomb? Sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It kind of does. A logic bomb is a piece of malicious code that's deliberately hidden inside a software system. It just sits there dormant, waiting for a specific trigger condition to be met. That trigger could be anything, really, a specific date and time arriving, a certain file being deleted, a particular user logging in, or maybe even the company's stock price hitting a certain level.
Wow.
Once that condition is met, boom, the logic bomb executes its payload, which could be anything from deleting data to crashing the system. They're often associated with disgruntled insiders who plant them before leaving a company.
A digital time bomb, essentially. Okay, now, privilege escalation. What's the danger there?
Privilege escalation is a crucial step for many attackers. Let's say an attacker initially gets into a system, maybe by tricking a user into running some malware, but they only have the permissions of a standard user.
Limited
Right,
access.
they can't do too much damage yet. Privilege escalation is the process they use to exploit vulnerabilities or misconfigurations within the system to gain higher level privileges.
Like becoming an administrator.
Exactly, or root on Linux Unix systems. Once they have those elevated privileges, they can bypass security controls, install more persistent malware like rootkits, access sensitive data anywhere on the system, change settings. Basically, they own the machine.
So getting in is one thing, but getting full control often involves this escalation step.
Very often, yes. It's a common goal after initial compromise.
Okay, shifting back to the physical world for a moment, tailgating. What's that about?
Tailgating is super simple, surprisingly effective, and purely physical. It's when someone without authorization follows closely behind someone who does have legitimate access into a secure area.
Like slipping through a door right behind someone who just swiped their badge?
Precisely that. You just walk in confidently right behind them, and often the person holding the door might even hold it for you out of politeness, assuming you belong there. It bypasses card readers, security guards sometimes.
Exploiting human nature, really.
Absolutely. It highlights that security isn't just digital. Physical access controls matter hugely.
Definitely. And related, maybe, is shoulder surfing, another low-tech one,
Very low tech. Shoulder surfing is just, well, looking over someone's shoulder.
to see what they're typing.
Yep. To visually steal sensitive information, passwords as they're typed, pins at an ATM, credit card numbers, confidential information displayed on a screen. It's amazing how often it works, especially in crowded places like airports or coffee shops.
Just need a clear line of sight.
That's all. Using screen protectors that limit viewing angles can help, but simple awareness is the best defense.
Good reminder. Okay, back to the digital side. Insider threat indicators. What are we looking for there?
This is a big one. Insider threats come from people within the organization, employees, contractors, anyone with legitimate access. These threats can be accidental, like someone clicking a phishing link, or malicious.
Right.
Insider threat indicators are the red flags, the behavioral clues that might suggest someone poses a risk.
Like what kind of things?
It could be a lot of things. Maybe someone suddenly starts trying to access data they don't normally need for their job, or they're downloading unusually large amounts of data. Maybe they're working at odd hours or trying to disable security software on their machine. Even expressing disillusionment or financial distress can sometimes be indicators, though you have to be careful not to jump to conclusions.
It's about spotting anomalies in behavior.
Exactly. Monitoring for these deviations from normal activity is crucial because insiders, by definition, already have some level of trusted access, which makes it easier for them to cause damage if they go rogue or their account gets compromised. Early detection is key.
A reminder that threats aren't always external. Okay, let's pivot to protecting data itself. When I visit a website and see that padlock icon, that relates to an SSL certificate, right? What's it actually doing?
Yes, exactly. That padlock means the site is using SSL, or more accurately nowadays, TLS, Transport Layer Security, which is the successor to SSL. The certificate serves two main purposes.
Okay, what are they?
First, authentication. The SSL TLS certificate verifies the identity of the website's server. It proves to your browser that you're connected to the real website for, say, your bank and not a fake one set up by attackers. A trusted third party called a certificate authority, CA, issues these certificates after verifying the website owner.
So it's like a digital ID card for the website.
A pretty good analogy, yeah. Second, encryption. Once your browser trusts the certificate, it establishes an encrypted connection with the server. All the data back and forth, usernames, passwords, credit card numbers, browsing activity is scrambled.
So no one listening in on the network can read it.
That's the goal. It protects your data in transit. So authentication and encryption, that's what HTTPS and the padlock signify. Different types of certificates offer different levels of validation rigor, by the way.
Good to know. Okay, what about data loss prevention, or DLP? How does that help protect information?
DLP is a set of technologies and strategies aimed at stopping sensitive data from leaking out of an organization inappropriately.
Leaking out how?
Well, it could be accidental, like an employee emailing a customer list to their personal account by mistake, or it could be malicious, like someone trying to copy confidential designs to a USB drive.
Right, so how do DLP systems work?
They scan data in motion, like emails or web uploads, or data at rest, like files stored on servers, or even data in use on endpoints, like laptops. They look for patterns that match sensitive information, credit card numbers, social security numbers, specific keywords like confidential.
Based on rules you define.
Exactly, based on policies set by the organization. If the DLP system detects sensitive data being handled in a way that violates policy, it can take action. It might block the email, prevent the file copy, encrypt the data automatically, or just alert a security administrator.
So it acts like a gatekeeper for sensitive data trying to leave.
That's a good way to put it. The challenge is tuning it correctly so it catches real leaks without blocking legitimate business activities too often. It's a balancing act.
I can imagine. Now, if the worst happens and there is a breach or an incident, what does a digital forensics investigation involve?
Digital forensics is basically the science of finding, collecting, preserving, and analyzing evidence from digital devices, computers, phones, servers, networks, in a way that's legally admissible.
Like CSI, but for computers.
Exactly. When a security incident occurs, like a hack or malware outbreak, forensics investigators come in to figure out what happened. They need to answer questions like, how did the attackers get in? What systems were affected? What data was accessed or stolen? Who was responsible?
Following the digital breadcrumbs.
Precisely. It involves making exact copies of hard drives, analyzing log files, examining network traffic captures, recovering deleted files. It's meticulous work. The goal is to understand the incident fully, contain it, and gather evidence that might be needed for legal action or internal procedures.
A crucial part of incident response. And finally, in this data section, what's the point of having a data retention policy?
A data retention policy is really important for managing information lifecycle. It dictates how long an organization needs to keep different types of data and also, crucially, when and how to securely get rid of it.
Why not just keep everything forever? Storage is cheap, right?
Storage might seem cheap, but keeping data indefinitely creates risks. Firstly, there are often legal and regulatory requirements that mandate keeping certain data for specific periods, but also destroying it after that. Think financial records or health information.
Compliance reasons.
Yes. Secondly, the more data you hold, especially old, unnecessary data, the bigger your potential liability if you suffer a data breach. Why risk exposing customer data from 10 years ago if you have no business need for it anymore?
Good point. Reduces the attack surface in a way.
Exactly. Plus, managing vast amounts of old data has cost storage, backup, searchability. So a good policy balances business needs, legal requirements, and security risks by ensuring data isn't kept longer than necessary.
Makes sense. Okay, let's talk cryptography and authentication. We hear about rainbow table attacks. What are those, and how do they relate to password strength?
Right. Rainbow tables. They're a technique used to crack passwords, specifically password hashes. You see, the systems rarely store your actual password. They store a scrambled version called a hash.
Okay.
A rainbow table is a huge pre-calculated lookup table. It contains millions, even billions, of common passwords and their corresponding hashes. So instead of an attacker trying to guess your password and hatching it to see if it matches the stored hash, which is slow, they can just look up the stolen hash in their rainbow table. If they find a match, bingo, they instantly know the original password.
Ah, so it's like a pre-made answer key for password hashes.
A very good analogy. This is why using strong, unique passwords is so vital. Simple, common passwords are much more likely to be in these rainbow tables.
And why password reuse is so bad.
Absolutely. But there's another important defense, salting. Salting means adding a unique random piece of data, the salt, to each user's password before it gets hashed.
How does that help?
Because now, even if two users have the same password, their salted hashes will be different. And it means attackers can't use a single rainbow table. They need a separate table for every possible salt value, which makes rainbow table attacks vastly less practical against properly salted hashes.
Clever. So strong passwords plus salting is the way to go. Now, what's a certificate revocation list, or CRL? Sounds related to the SSL certificates we talked about.
It is related. Remember how we said a certificate authority issues SSL TLS certificates to verify website identities?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes a certificate needs to be canceled before its natural expiration date. Maybe the website owner lost control of the private key associated with the certificate, meaning someone else could impersonate them. Or maybe the certificate was issued mistakenly, or the organization it belonged to ceased operations.
So the certificate is no longer trustworthy.
Exactly. The Certificate Revocation List, or CRL, is a list published by the CA that contains the serial numbers of all the certificates it has revoked. When your browser connects to a website using HTTPS, it's supposed to check if that site's certificate is on the CA's CRL.
Like checking a blacklist.
Precisely. It's a way to ensure you're not trusting a certificate that's known to be compromised or invalid. There are other, sometimes faster methods for checking revocation status too, like OCSP, but the CRL is the classic mechanism.
Got it. A digital do not trust list. We also hear about asymmetric encryption. Can you give us an example and just the basic idea without getting too mathematical?
Sure, RSA is probably the most famous example of an asymmetric encryption algorithm. The key idea behind asymmetric is that it uses two different keys, not one.
Two keys.
Yes, a mathematically related pair, a public key and a private key. The public key can be shared freely with anyone. The private key must be kept absolutely secret by the owner.
Okay, public and private, how do they work together?
Well, if someone wants to send you a secure message, they use your public key to encrypt it. Once encrypted with your public key, the only key in the world that can decrypt that message is your corresponding private key.
Ah, so I can give out my public key widely. People can use it to lock messages for me, but only I have the private key to unlock them.
Exactly. It allows secure communication without having to securely share a secret key beforehand, which is a big advantage. This same public-private key pair mechanism is also used for digital signatures. You use your private key to sign a message, and anyone with your public key can verify that the signature is authentic and came from you.
That two-key system is really foundational for a lot of online security.
Immensely so. Okay, final one in this section, steganography. What's that? Sounds exotic as a big cloak and dagger. Steganography is the art and science of hiding information within other, seemingly harmless information.
Hiding it, not encrypting it.
Well, you might encrypt the hidden message too, but the primary goal of steganography is concealment, hiding the fact that a secret message even exists. Unlike encryption, which makes the message unreadable but obviously looks like scrambled data, steganography tries to make the secret data blend in invisibly.
How do you hide data inside other data?
A common technique is hiding text within the pixels of an image file, or embedding a secret message in the subtle noise of an audio file. To the casual observer, it just looks like a normal picture, or sounds like a normal recording. Only someone who knows the hiding method and possibly a key can extract the hidden information.
Hiding in plain sight. Fascinating. Okay, let's move to network security and monitoring. What does an anti-spoofing filter do for us?
Anti-spoofing filters are important network defenses, usually on routers or firewalls. They're designed to combat attacks where the attacker fakes or spoofs the source address in network packets.
Why would they fake the address?
Several reasons. To hide their real location, obviously, or to impersonate a trusted device on the network to bypass security rules. Or sometimes, in denial-of-service attacks, they spoof the source address to make it harder to block the attack or to redirect responses back to a victim.
Okay, so how does the filter stop this?
It examines the source IP address of incoming packets. If a packet arrives on a network interface claiming to be from a source IP address range that logically shouldn't be coming from that direction, like packets arriving from the internet claiming to have an internal company IP address, the filter blocks it.
Like checking the return address on mail to see if it makes sense.
Exactly. It's a basic but important sanity check to prevent traffic with obviously forged source addresses from entering or sometimes leaving your network.
Got it. Now, SIEM correlation. SIEM stands for.
Security information and event management. A SIEM system collects log data and security alerts from potentially hundreds of thousands of different sources across your IP environment, firewalls, servers, workstations, applications, intrusion detection systems, everything.
Okay, collects all that data. What's the correlation part?
That's where the real value comes in. Correlation is the process of analyzing all that disparate data, looking for patterns, connections, and sequences of events that might indicate a sophisticated attack or security issue that wouldn't be obvious from looking at any single log source in isolation.
Connecting the dots.
Exactly. For example, maybe a log from a firewall shows a connection from a known malicious IP address. Then, a log from an endpoint shows malware being detected shortly after. Then, a log from Active Directory shows failed login attempts using that user's account. Correlating these events points a much clearer picture of an ongoing attack.
Seeing the whole story instead of just isolated chapters.
Precisely. Good SIEM correlation rules, often enriched with threat intelligence, help security teams detect complex threats much more effectively.
Makes sense. What about Unified Threat Management, UTM? What's unified about it?
UTM is basically an all-in-one security appliance approach. Instead of having separate boxes for your firewall, your intrusion prevention system, your web content filter, your antivirus gateway, your VPN concentrator.
A lot of boxes.
Yeah, a UTM device integrates many or all of those security functions into a single appliance or platform.
The advantage being?
Simplicity mainly. Especially for smaller or medium-sized businesses. It can be easier to manage and potentially cheaper than buying and managing multiple separate point solutions. You get a unified interface for configuration and monitoring.
Any downsides?
Well, sometimes the individual functions might not be as powerful or feature-rich as best-of-breed standalone devices. And if the single UTM box fails, you could lose multiple layers of security at once. But for many organizations, it's a practical solution.
An integrated security suite for the network edge. Okay. And finally here, cyber threat intelligence. Why is that important?
Cyber threat intelligence, or CTI, is essentially knowledge about threats. It's information about who the attackers are, what their motivations and capabilities are, and criticate how they operate their tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs.
So knowing your enemy.
Exactly. CTI provides context. It helps organizations understand the specific threats they are most likely to face based on their industry, geography, or technology stack. This information comes from many sources, open source feeds, government agencies, commercial providers, information sharing groups.
And how do you use this intelligence?
You use it to make more informed decisions about your defenses. If you know attackers are targeting your industry with a specific type of phishing attack, you can enhance your email filtering and user training accordingly. If you know about a new malware variant using certain network protocols, you can update your detection rules. It allows you to be more proactive, anticipating attacks rather than just reacting to them.
Shifting from reactive to proactive defense. Very important. Okay, last section, best practices and validation. What's a baseline configuration?
A baseline configuration is like a standard secure template for setting up your systems. It defines the required security settings, software versions, and configurations that all systems of a certain type, say all Windows servers or all employee laptops, should adhere to.
A secure starting point.
Exactly. It ensures consistency. Instead of every system being set up slightly differently, maybe with security holes, you establish a known secure state as the baseline. This makes systems easier to manage, audit, and secure. Any deviation from the baseline might indicate a problem or a misconfiguration.
So it simplifies things and raises the minimum security bar.
Right. And configuration management tools can help automate the process of applying and monitoring these baselines.
Good practice. Now, penetration testing or pen testing, why would you deliberately attack your own systems?
It sounds counterintuitive, but it's incredibly valuable. Penetration testing is essentially a simulated cyber attack performed by ethical hackers with your permission against your own infrastructure or applications.
To find the weaknesses before the real bad guys do.
Precisely. The pen testers use the same tools and techniques as real attackers to try and breach your defenses, escalate privileges, access sensitive data, whatever the agreed scope is. They then provide a detailed report on the vulnerabilities they found and how they exploited them.
Like a fire drill, but for cyber attacks.
A very good analogy. It actively tests your security controls in a real-world scenario rather than just relying on theoretical checks. There are different types too: black box, where the testers have no prior knowledge, white box, where they have full details, and gray box, somewhere in between. It's a critical way to validate how effective your security actually is.
Find the holes before they get exploited. Makes perfect sense. Finally, what's a service level agreement or SLA and how does it relate to security?
An SLA is essentially a contract between a service provider and a customer that defines the expected level of service. It covers things like uptime guarantees, performance metrics, support response times.
Okay, but the security aspect.
Well, SLAs can and often should include specific security commitments from the provider. For example, if you're using a cloud provider, the FLA might specify their responsibilities for patching systems, the security controls they have in place, how quickly they'll notify you in case of a security incident involving your data, or what the recovery objectives are if data is lost.
So it sets clear expectations about who is responsible for what, security-wise.
Exactly. It clarifies the security posture and responsibilities of the service provider, which is crucial when you're entrusting your data or operations to a third party. Reading the security sections of an SLA is really important.
Good advice. Wow, we have covered a lot of ground today, from hardening systems to understanding threat actors, data protection,
It's a
cryptography.
wide field.
It really is. And it's clear that having even just this foundational grasp of these concepts is, well, pretty essential for anyone using technology today, which is basically everyone.
Absolutely. And hopefully, with these ideas in mind, you, our listener, can start thinking about how they apply to your own digital life. What steps could you take, even small ones, to maybe improve your own security posture?
That's a great point. This deep dive really is just a starting point, isn't it?
Definitely. If any particular topic grabbed your interest, maybe forensics or cryptography or threat intelligence, we'd really encourage you to explore it further. Cybersecurity is constantly changing.
So continuous learning is definitely the name of the game.
Couldn't agree more.